hunters called the Fianna. You know those kind of warriors that ride around on horseback, covered from head to toe in shining armor? They carry huge, heavy swords, maces, battle axes. Well, that's not the kind of warrior that your average member of the Fianna was. Oh no. They didn't ride horses. They didn't have them. The Fianna went everywhere on foot, and they had no shining armor or chainmail. They wore simple tunics and leggings, and on their feet they wore soft leather sandals. You might think they lived in palaces and slept on soft, downy beds. Not at all. They lived out in the open air, in the woods and glens of Ireland. The Fianna loved nature and the freedom of being in it. Their downy bed was the mossy forest floor, and their palace was the starry sky above them. Now, not just anyone could join the Fianna. This was because their special job was to protect the High King of Ireland, so they needed to be the most skilled warriors in the land, and they were. In order to join the Fianna, you had to prove yourself by passing a number of tests. In one of these tests, the young warrior had to tie his hair into a tight braid and run as fast as he could through a forest thick with underbrush and bramble, and come out the other side without having disturbed a hair on his head. In another test, the young hopeful warrior was put into a pit and given a small shield and sword. He then had to defend himself from below against 9 experienced encircling Fianna. Well, you might expect those kinds of tests for warriors, but who ever heard of a poetry test for a warrior? These young men that wanted to be in the Fianna had to be able to recite hundreds of well-known poems of the day. These poems were long, some of them hundreds of verses. They even had to be able to compose their own poetry. The leader of the Fianna was the great hero Finn McCool. I could tell you stories from here to next week about Finn, but I won't, because the hero of our story is Oisin, Finn's own son. Oisin was the master harper of the Fianna, their chief poet, and in those days, whenever poetry was recited, it was always accompanied by the harp. When Oisin played, everyone and everything stopped. His fingers had magic in them. Oisin was expert at what were considered the 3 noble strains of music. The first was called the sojourn. This is even now the Irish word for lullaby, because this music was designed to help bring on sleep. The next of the noble strains was called the Gianthri, from the Irish word gian, meaning love or affection. This music was composed to evoke such feelings. The last of the noble strains was called the Golthri, from the Irish word for lament or cry. This music would help a person to shed their unshed tears. Our story begins after the Battle of Gowra, the final battle of the Fianna which brought them terrible defeat. Oh, the air was filled with laments and cries. So many breathed their last that day, great warriors, both friend and kin. Among them was Oisin's own son, Oscar, one of the bravest of them all. Grieving, dispirited, and heavy-hearted, the Fianna could feel that their days as champions were coming to a close. So Finn gathered together his small, weary band of men and journeyed to Loch Lane in County Kerry, where they had spent many better, cheerier hours. A misty May morning greeted them as they set out to hunt, their hounds bounding gaily through the trees. The vibrant smell of the green woods and the excitement of the chase somewhat refreshed and eased their saddened spirits. coming toward them was a magnificent white horse, shod in gold with golden harnesses. On top of the horse sat a young woman of extraordinary beauty. Lush golden curls cascaded over her shoulders from underneath a jeweled crown. Her lips looked sweet as rosebuds, her skin glowed fresh and radiant, and her eyes, clear, sparkling magic. She came near to them and she said, "Finn, son of Cool, I have searched long and far to find thee, and now I have glad success." Finn said, "You've come to find me. Pray, give us your name, from whence you've come, and what you desire of me." She said, "Noble Finn, my father is king of Tir, and I am called Niamh of the Head of Gold. My purpose," she said, glancing at Oisin, "is to make a special and rare plea, but not what you might think. My love for your son Oisin compels me." She turned to Oisin and said, "Will you come with me, Oisin, away to my father's land, the land of the ever-young? It is the most extraordinary place under the sun. Natural splendour everywhere, peace and prosperity amidst all the folk, grand feasts where wine flows in abundance, every possible delight you can imagine, as much as you could ever want. And I too am there. You'll have me as your wife." Oisin blinked with amazement. You're asking me?" he stammered. You want me to join you?" There was no hiding it. Her presence aroused a passionate love in him. But his loyalty to the Fianna in their sorrow at this desperate time toward him, "Leave my home, leave my brothers," kept running through his mind. "Yes, Oisin, yes, you. The tales of your good nature and wonderful music have captured my heart. Listen, your handsome stature, your strength, your power, they will all be increased there." But still Oisin could only stare, transfixed. Finally he said, "My music? My music is known there." "Oh, Oisin, we have heard about it, but we wish to hear it for ourselves. And in that land, no one ever grows old or sick or dies. Here, everything passes and fades, but there your river of music and poetry can flow forever. Will you come? Say yes, oh do say yes." Oisin became still, pondering. A land where no one grows old, no one grows ill, no one dies. How tempting was that thought, for he had of late begun to sense the ebbing of his own youthful strength. The weighty grief of the loss of his son Oscar pressed upon him, and the images of all those companions lost in battle poured into his mind. Full of anguish, he felt keenly aware of the waning of their valiant band. Will it all be lost forever? He wondered. Our stories, all we have fought for, everything that has meaning for us. He looked back to Niamh, and the words flew out of his mouth. "Yea, Niamh, I will come gladly." Beaming with happiness, she said, "Let's go then." So he leapt upon the fairy's steed behind her and held Niamh close in his arms. But when Finn saw Oisin astride the horse, he cried out, aching, mournful cries, "Oh, Oisin! Oisin, my son! Oisin, why do you go? If you leave now, I know you will never return. This will be our last moment together." Oisin stopped. His tears flowed freely as he leaned down and gave his father a deep embrace. "I must," he said. "I must go." He looked at all the Fianna, feeling the sadness he saw on their faces. He remembered remembered everything that they had been through together. "My friends," he said, but he could not say more, for there was too much to say. Suddenly, the white horse stomped its feet, neighed to the sky, and leapt forward. In 3 huge, unfathomable gallops, it carried them all the way from Loch Lena in County Kerry to the shores of the Western Sea, and then it leapt out over the waves. Oisin was astonished. He looked behind him, watching the coast of Erin as it became smaller and smaller, finally vanishing. The sun blazed hot and bright above them as they rode into a mist of gold, and Oisin lost all sense of where he was. Then, strange, ethereal sights appeared before him. "Niamh, what are these airy visions? Speak not of them," Niamh whispered, "nor of anything you see or hear. Pay no mind, keep your gaze forward, and seek no answers till we arrive safely at Tir. Then the sky grew darker and dimmer above them, and Niamh kept urging their steed to go faster and faster. Daunting wind, stinging rain, pounding thunder, and crashing lightning, they held fast on their way. Finally, they came again to a place of calm and sunshine, and there Oisin saw a shore of yellow sand where they lighted down. "What a marvel," he said. "Never did I see water so blue, or trees so stately." And indeed, Tir was unbelievably beautiful. They started down a path that took them trotting through a wood, and this forest itself was alive. Colorful songbirds serenaded them as they passed by. Creatures that run from men in fright elsewhere came forward to them without fear. Oisin was astonished. On and on they traveled, till they came to a great city. As they rode through the festive streets, they met townspeople who greeted them with cheers and goodwill, all young, all smiling as if the morning of happy life had just begun. Arriving at an elegant palace, the king and queen of Tir came forward, greeting them warmly. "Welcome, Oisin, son of Finn, to the land of the ever-young," said the king. "No trouble, weariness, or death will ever touch you in this place. This you have won by your faithfulness and valor, and by the songs and verses you have crafted for the men of Erin. Indeed, we are glad to have you, chief poet of the race of men, here with us, immortal among immortals. For although we have here almost all things that are delightful, poetry alone we have not. We are eager to hear you sing of the fine life we lead in this paradise, for we have no doubt that these songs will be as grand as those you have crafted about the short and toilsome life of the land you have left. My daughter, Niamh, shall be your bride." Oisin's heart filled with glory and joy. He turned to Niamh and saw her eyes burn with love as she gazed upon him. They were wedded that same day, and their feeling for one another grew sweeter and deeper as each day passed. The life in Tir was exactly as Niamh had described it, overflowing with beauty and splendor. But Oisin's hand now never touched the harp. Even the desire to sing or make poetry never awoke in him. For nothing in Tir was better than anything else. All perfection bloomed and glowed upon him, so he felt no need to praise any one thing, no need to lament any loss or sorrow. When 7 days had passed, Oisin grew restless. What is the matter with me? I have everything I could want. He plucked a few notes on his instrument. But no inspiration came, and he let his hand fall. He walked outside, where the scent of fresh greenery filled the air. And that aroma stirred a memory of Loch Lena and the hunt. Ah, of course, he laughed to himself. Of course, I missed the chase. He ran back inside to Niamh. I would go hunting. Oh, so be it, she said. We shall go tomorrow. He lay awake late into the night, looking forward to the scent of the fresh greenery when it is kindled to roast the meat in the wild wood. Looking forward to sleeping again on the mossy forest floor, to having the starry sky as his canopy. The next day, off they went to the forest on horseback with their company of knights and maidens and dogs. They followed a stag, chasing it all day long, finally pulling it down as darkness began to fall. Long it felt to Oisin since he felt the glad tiredness he felt now. And he bade his men to make ready a little wood oven to roast the stag, and to build a little shelter of boughs where he and Niamh could rest. But when Niamh led Oisin back to where the stag lay, suddenly, and magically, there appeared before them a stately little structure. Well, they entered into it, and saw before them a table set for a great company, and many cooks and serving men busying themselves, roasting and boiling meats of all kinds. Oisin thought it curious, but he sat with Niamh, enjoying the tasty meal. That night they slept not in the woodland bothy he had longed for, but in a fair chamber on a soft bed. The next day again the forest rang with the sounds of their hunt, and again they caught their prey as night approached, and again they feasted and rested in a castle that rose magically in the wilderness. And so it went on for all of 7 days. And at the close of the 8th, as Oisin pulled an arrow from his quiver to slay yet another stag, something made him stop. This is all too weird. It's like someone is playing a game with me and letting me win. I don't like it. He shuddered, dropped his bow, and ran straight to Niamh. Niamh, something is not right. It's not real, or maybe it's not enough of a challenge. I need something else. Is your father a foe to tame, or a wrong to avenge? Niamh looked at him, perplexed. Seeing her confusion, he said, I am a warrior, Niamh. Surely a warrior is no man who forgets the sword hilt, or whose heart forgets his service to the king. And a warrior is no man who has no need to grow his heart in the struggle for good. Niamh looked at him strangely for a while. Last she said, if deeds of arms are your desire, Oisin, you can have your fill before long. So they gathered their company and rode back to the palace. The next day, when the sun awoke them, they set out. In the glimmering dawn, they rode through the empty streets, and then through fields and orchards. By midday they began to mount upward through blue hills. There was no more sign of man, and the way became more silent and lonely. They journeyed on until they came to a huge fortress lying in a mountain pass, built of stones as white as death. We have left Tir, said Niamh, and are now in the land of virtue. That is the abode of the giant, Fomor of the mighty blows. There he keeps the princess of the land of life, whom he abducted. He wants to marry her, but he cannot yet, because she was able to put an enchantment on him. He must wait until some single champion goes against him, but no one has come forward. They are all too afraid, so she remains a captive. I will try to set her free, said she. They went forward to the massive castle doors. A beautiful woman let them in and greeted them. Weeping, she told them of her imprisonment. I long to return home. I hope and pray. Lady, I am here, said she. If fortune fortune and my strong arm stay with me, I'll prevail, or else I'll fight to the death. At that moment they heard the loud, pounding steps of the giant. Fovor approached, huge and ugly, dragging his recent kill. He spied Oisin and growled. Oisin leapt to his feet and pulled out his sword. "I challenge thee!" he called out. The giant, with a loud, nasty cry, ran at Oisin, swinging his battle axe. The fight raged with shouts and clashing steel. Oisin fought bravely and nimbly, dodging Fovor's blows. His whole soul was bent on one thought, to drive his sword home into some weak point in Fovor's defense. But there was no weak point in Fovor's defense. For 7 days and 7 nights they struggled and fought, Oisin growing more and more weary. It was impossible to gain against Fovor's relentless assaults. "Must go on, must go on, must go on," he said to himself. "Must win, must win, must win!" He felt it was hopeless. He searched every part of his heart, his body, his mind for more force, some way to continue. And then, suddenly, in a flash, he saw the face of his father, Finn, and the faces of all those he had left behind in Loch Lena. A bold, new energy filled him from head to toe, and a fierce battle cry of the Fianna welled up in him. He let out that heroic yell as loudly as if they all shouted with him. Stunned Fovor for a few seconds, but that was all she needed. He leapt forward and with one mighty blow cut off the giant's head. The two women cheered wildly and then were overcome, weeping with relief and joy. Finally, the princess of the Land of Life was able to speak. "How can I thank you enough, Oisin? I am so grateful. At last, I can return home." They celebrated, feasting late into the night, and after a good rest, took their leave. Oisin's heart was filled with real pride and the delicious taste of victory. He thought again of the Fianna, how it seemed that they had helped him to win the battle. A longing arose in him as he remembered the days when some great deed had been done and the tale was hailed and lauded by all around a campfire. He thought of the smile on Finn's face upon hearing how his children had borne themselves in battle, risking death. He wanted to see that smile again, knowing how much pleasure this heroic tale would bring his father. So, as they walked to their horses, he turned to Niamh and said, "Let me, for a short while, return to the land of Erin, that I may see there my friends and kin, and tell them of this triumph, and of the marvellous life that is mine in the land of the ever-young." But Niamh opened her eyes wide with distress. She laid her white arms about his neck. "Oh, think no more of that sad land, where all men live and move under a canopy of death, where summer is slain by winter and youth by old age." Yes, Niamh, the land of men is indeed a wasteland compared with Tir na Nog, but I hunger to tell my tale to those folks. It will fill them with wonder, it will inspire them. Then I will return to you happy and at peace. Niamh was not comforted. All the way back to Tir na Nog she hung her head. When they arrived, she led out the white horse that had first carried them to the land of the ever-young. "This horse," she said, "will take you back to exactly where I found you and will take you to wherever you wish. But never, never, never can you alight from his back, for if your foot so much as touch the soil of earth, even for an instant, you will never be able to return to me or to Tir na Nog again." "You will take care, Niamh. Since coming here, I've learned how to stay in a saddle." Niamh's eyes brimmed over with tears. "Warn you, Oisin, things will not be as you expect them. Is not my love enough to win your mortal heart?" Ah, Niamh, this is no lack of love. I wish to see my father once more. My stay will be short, I promise. I do not think you will find him. But if you must go, then go. Blessings and triumph be yours. Oisin held her long in his arms and kissed her. Again and again he promised to make no long stay and to remain upon the fairy steed. He shook the reins and he was off, back over the smooth blue sea, through mist and dreams where no day was, nor night, nor any thought of time, back through pelting rain and pounding thunder, back through ghosts and apparitions, and at last he arrived where black rocks rose up around the sides of a little bay, and there he saw green fields and toil-worn men and women, but he did not stop there. He kept on, eager to reach the Hill of Allen, the place where he knew he would see those who were dear to him. But when he came to that field, what a sight met his eyes. There was nothing there. Stones lay on the ground where once the great dune had stood. Grassy mounds were covered with weeds, and there were livestock grazing among the bushes. No, who can this be? He thought. He called out the names of his friends and kin. Finn! Quilter! Diarmuid! He listened, but he could hear only the wind in the leaves, buzzing flies, and cows crunching the grass. He thought of the hounds, Bran and Skjolden. Surely they would hear him, and they would come. Bran! Skjolden! He stood still, listening for any response, but all in vain. He went from one of Finn's haunts to another, but everywhere was deserted, overgrown, and desolate. Oh, it's some horrible fairy curse, he said to himself. False visions and deceptions. He shook the horse's reins. Come on, boy, fast as you can. We'll shake this. And he spurred his horse toward the horizon. As they neared the sea, he saw a band of workers struggling to move a heavy stone with no success. Ah, I'll ask them. They know where I can find the Fianna. But as he neared, he drew his horse to a sudden stop, shocked at the sight of them. For although they were ordinary folk, they appeared to him exceedingly puny, small, and weak, unlike any he had ever seen. What sort of men are these? He said to himself. Are they part of some other nasty enchantment? They, too, stopped their work and stared. To them, he appeared just as strange, just as magical. He was far taller than they and aglow with vitality, seeming to be almost a godlike presence. They would have the strength to lift that stone, he said. Ha! No harm if I help them. So he rode forward and they parted, watching him with amazement. He leaned forward and with one mighty thrust of his hand, he sent the rock tumbling down the hill. Oh, the men let out a great cheer, but then screams of fear. They ran away as fast as they could, for as he had strained to lift the boulder, the saddle girth on the horse had broken, throwing him violently to the ground. Suddenly, the white horse disappeared as though he had never been. As he lay there, his crimson cloak and yellow tunic changed to coarse, dull, homespun stuff. His bright, shining sword became an oaken beggar's staff, and his strong body transformed to that of a very, very old and feeble man. And the men realized that this horror was not meant for them, but for Oisin alone. They returned to where he was with his arms hidden from his hands. And they lifted lifted him up and asked him who he was and what had befallen him. Oisin looked around him then with dim eyes, and finally he said, "Where is Finn? I pray, tell me where he now dwells, for his dune on the hill of Allen is now in desolation, and I have neither seen him nor heard his hunting horn in these woods where he was fond to dwell." The men looked at each other and then at Oisin, and the overseer said, "Of what Finn do you speak? For there be many of that name in Edinburgh." "Why, surely of Finn, MacCool, MacTrainver, captain of the Fianna of Erin." The men shifted uneasily and looked away in dismay. The overseer said, "Why do you spurt at us? Tell us who you are, and what evil enchantment has happened here." "What more can I say? I am Oisin, and I am looking for my father." "What? Are your wits gone, man? Everyone knows Finn died at the Battle of Bray, but 300 years past. You, Finn? You, Oisin? Bah. Some of his songs and verses are still known, but he's been long gone too. We'd love so much to do with those old ways anyway, how knows?" What ways do you have now?" "Where have you been? We're blessed with all the but Patrick has showed us the blessings of the one God and Christ his Son, so we've no need now for all that." No need. Finn was the greatest of them all. Whoever this one God and Christ his Son are, how can they have been greater than Finn? Oh, the men grew angry at that. "You dare to insult our God!" one burly man spat out at him. A few others picked up stones. Wait, said the overseer. "Calm yourselves, hold your tongues. It's not fitting to go against such a frail and weak old man. And you're forgetting the good he did for us, so you leave him be." "Yeah, but what do we do with him then?" said one. "Just as likely as some demon playing tricks on us." Ah, the overseer could see that his men were as spooked as they were angry. "Let's take him to Patrick. He'll know what to do with him." So they lifted up Oisin and carried him to the saint, for Oisin could barely walk. Strange as it may seem, when they arrived, Patrick greeted him as if they were old friends. "Tell me all," said Patrick. In the safety of Patrick's presence, Oisin felt free to speak. So in the short span of life that yet remained to him, he told Patrick many tales of the Fianna and their deeds. And Patrick, in his wisdom, took care that these stories were preserved for all future generations, which is why we have them today. But of the 300 years he spent with Niamh in Tir, Oisin rarely spoke, for they seemed to him as a vision or a dream.